going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today we have our updated March Madness bracket predictions. Today we're back on CBS Sports Bracketology, of course, made by Bracketology expert over at CBS, Jerry Palm. And we're going to take his updated bracketology that was updated here on Monday, February 10th, and put it into our own personal PDF bracket and fill it out all the way from the first round to the national championship based on what we think would happen if March Madness did start today. And we do these videos at least once a week and a bunch of other college basketball content here on the channel, so you don't want to miss it. If you guys are a college basketball fan or you're just now starting to get back into college basketball right before March Madness, this is the perfect place for you. We do a ton of content, so make sure you guys subscribe. We're getting close to 10K, trying to get there for March Madness, so hit that sub button for me. I'd really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into filling out this bracket. So we still have, even though they took their first loss in forever and only their second loss on the season this past Saturday to Florida, we have Auburn still as our number one seed in the tournament. I agree with them. I think Auburn definitely still deserves to be the top team. And right before I started recording this video on Tuesday night, they actually just picked up another win on the road at Vanderbilt. So back to looking like themselves again. Auburn looking really good, and they'll be going up against either Little Rock or American. I'm actually going to pick American in that matchup there. I do think that they would win. I think they're the better team over Little Rock. I haven't watched too much of those two teams, but I will have Auburn beating American University there in the first round, 1/16. Then we do have West Virginia versus Vanderbilt in the 8-9 matchup. My favorite team, the WVU Mountaineers. 8 line. Jerry Palm has us a little bit higher, which I actually really like. This is before we just lost to BYU here on Tuesday night, which I was not happy with my team about that, but hopefully they can bounce back because they're getting close to, being on the bubble, but hopefully not too bad. Jerry Palm has us closer to an 8 seed. Joe Lunardi and them have us more so as like a 10 seed. And that was before their recent loss here on Tuesday night. So hopefully they can still stay in the tournament and hopefully bounce back with a big dub at Baylor on Saturday. But I do think WVU has the team to beat Vanderbilt in the first round. I think Javon Small is going to be the best player on the court in this game, and a lot of his teammates around him, like Joe Yesufu, Toby Akani, have really stepped up. Amani Hansberry, because it really there for a while when Tucker DeVries first got hurt, it was all Javon Small. Everything was on him, and it still kind of is, but a lot of teams have been face guarding him full court or double teaming him, which has really had West Virginia rely on some of the other players to help them out, and I think by the time they get to tournament time, they're going to be ready to get a win like this. I like the matchup against Vanderbilt here between two first-year head coaches at Power 5 conference teams. They're going at it, trying to get their first win in the NCAA tournament at their new programs. Then we have Kentucky versus George Mason. George Mason, he has them out of the A-10 conference here as a 12 seed. He doesn't have any A-10 teams getting an at-large at this point. So George Mason is our lone A-10 team. I think that they will play this game tough, will represent the A-10 well. But I am going to have Kentucky hold on. I think too much offense. They played a great game tonight. Right before I'm recording this video, I just watched a lot of the 7 o'clock games. Kentucky held strong against Tennessee at home, was able to pick up the W and go 2-0 against Tennessee this year. That was a big win by Kentucky. I like this matchup here against George Mason. Then we do have Samford versus Memphis here, 13 versus a 4. And I do like Memphis a lot. I think they're a really good offensive team and one of the more underrated three-point shooting teams in the country. Tyrese Hunter has really improved his three-point shot. Almost looks like he did his freshman year at Iowa State, that team that went to the Sweet 16. He wasn't shooting the ball as well at Texas, I feel like, but now he's kind of gotten that back under Coach Penny Hardaway, and Colby Rogers is a really good shooter there for Memphis as well, and of course PJ Haggerty. So I am going to go with Memphis. I think this is going to be a very offensive game, and it's going to be closer than people think because Samford has a very high-powered offense, especially for a mid-major team. So I do think it will be a high-scoring game, at least in the high 70s. but I am going to go with Memphis here to win that game. Then we do have UCLA versus either Georgia or Texas, and I don't like that we have to have a SEC matchup here in the last four in game, but I am going to have Georgia over Texas. I think they're the more well-rounded team. I think Texas is really kind of getting carried by Trey Johnson, which is kind of crazy because he's a freshman, but Georgia has a lot of really good pieces. They've been playing really well, and I'm going to have Georgia over UCLA in my first little upset here of the video, an 11-6. I like this Georgia team. I like Asa Newell down low. Very solid freshman, big man, who can really step out and hit a jump shot as well. Give me Georgia here in this one. And then we got Iowa State versus Northern Colorado. Now, I do like Northern Colorado as a mid-major. If they get the right matchup, I could maybe see them pulling off a huge upset. I'm not going to pick it here, though. Iowa State, I'm way too high on. And even though they kind of had their rough patch, I think they're going to start to get it together here in the next, month here before the March Madness tournament. So I really like Iowa State to get it back on track. I think a 3 seed. I think they're going to get back up to at least a 2 by the time we get to the tournament. But I do like them over Northern Colorado, of course, here in the first round. Then we do have Louisville versus Baylor, 7 versus 10. I think this would be a fantastic matchup. Baylor has actually impressed me a little bit over the past couple of weeks. I was kind of down and out on the Baylor Bears a few weeks ago, but VJ Edgecombe has really emerged and started to be their best player, and that's kind of what we expected at the beginning of the season, so they're kind of getting back to that, but I still think they've been underwhelming this season, and Louisville, I think, is going to be the better team here in this one. There's going to be a lot of offense in this one as well. I think Louisville does have the better defense. I am going to go with Louisville here to win this game and get the 7-10 victory there. And then we got Purdue versus Cleveland State. Cleveland State has been quietly playing pretty good in their league there and climbing the ranks here. But I like Purdue. They did just blow a lead to Michigan. But I think Braden Smith, I don't think he's going to allow his team to get upset in the first round again. And give me Purdue. Give me Purdue. Braden Smith's been playing out of this world. One of the best point guards in the country. Got to take the Boilermakers in that one. Let's go ahead. Should we go through the whole first round or just go region by region? I say let's go through the whole first round and then we'll circle back. Actually, no. We'll go through region by region just because I feel like I know what I want to do with this region. We can go ahead and get that one done. So Auburn versus West Virginia in the second round. No way I can pick West Virginia. As biased as I want to be, I got to take Auburn. There is no chance West Virginia would beat this Auburn team this year, especially not in the tournament. Give me the Auburn Tigers to move on. Next up, we got Kentucky versus Memphis. I think this would be another super offensive game, and there's a lot of great offenses in this region, and this is a game that I expect to be in the 80s, 100%, if not the 90s. I'm going to go with Memphis, though. I'm going to go with Memphis. I think that they have, some more consistent bucket getters on this team. Kentucky kind of relies on Ortega Oweh. Kobe Brea, of course, is maybe the best, most efficient shooter in the country. But I really like the duo of PJ Haggerty and Tyrese Hunter. I think that they're going to show up big in March Madness, especially Tyrese Hunter. He's going to step up huge in the tournament. And I think Memphis is going to surprise some people, and they're going to get a sneaky little run here to the Sweet 16. Next up, we got Georgia versus Iowa State, and I am going to have Georgia's run end here. I think Iowa State's just too good. I love a lot of these players on this Cyclone team, and I think this is the best Cyclone team that they've had maybe ever. I expect a big run by the Cyclones this year. I'm sticking to that even through their rough patch, and I like them here to get past Georgia. Then we got Louisville versus Purdue. I think this might be Kentucky-Memphis is going to be a very close second-round matchup, but I was going to say this might be the closest second-round matchup of this region. That one or Kentucky-Memphis. These are going to be close games, but the way that Braden Smith has been playing recently, I know Louisville has a pretty good defense, though, and they can put up a lot of points, too. The more and more I'm thinking about it, I'm talking myself into a close win here for Louisville. I think that if they win, it's going to be a close game. They're going to scrape by. I could see that one going either way, but I'm going to pick a slight upset here and go with Louisville, 7 seed over a 2. And then we have our Sweet 16 out of the first region, which would be the South region, and we got Auburn versus Memphis, a rematch. We've seen this in the Maui Championship. It seems like every bracketologist wants to put Memphis in the same region as Auburn, which I hate for Memphis because I do not like the matchup for them against Auburn. I am going to go with the Auburn Tigers here to get to the Elite Eight. Then we got Iowa State versus Louisville, and I like this Iowa State team in this matchup. I think they're too good. 3 seed gets the nod there and makes it into the Elite Eight. I like this Louisville team. I think they play good defense. They shoot the ball actually really well. I think Iowa State just plays, a tougher defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They get out into transition. They rebound the basketball. And they have 3 really good guards that I love on this team. I think Tamin Lipsey is going to play a huge role for this team, especially in March Madness. Keyshawn Gilbert had a big start to the season. He's kind of slowed down, but that's because Curtis Jones has really stepped up and been a big-time baller for this Iowa State team and one of the best players in the country. And I like Iowa State here, still to the Elite Eight. Like I said, I think they're going to pick it up a lot before we do get to March Madness. And then we have our 1 seed versus our 3 seed to make it to the Final Four. This is also another rematch. We saw it in the first round of the Maui tournament where Auburn won on a buzzer beater put back by Janai Broome. And could we see something similar? I think in a rematch it would be close once again. But I'm going to go with a slight upset here. I am going to go with Iowa State to win this one. I like Iowa State's guards better than Auburn. I do think Auburn can win this game 100%. They're going to be favored in this game. They've won it before, and I think they have the advantage in the front court. However, I do think that in the back court, Tamin Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, I like them better as more consistent players, and also Tamin Lipsey as a more consistent playmaker. Then I think he's going to be the best playmaker on the court in this game, and I think that's huge. I know Auburn has some really good shooters. They have guards that bring a lot to the table. Their most well-rounded guard, in my opinion, is probably Todd Pettiford, the freshman, who has been balling. I think in order for Auburn to win this one in a rematch where they beat Iowa State before, Todd Pettiford is going to have a huge game. And also, Miles Kelly is going to have to shoot the ball very, very efficiently, and he's going to have to hit some big shots. And also, of course, Chad Baker-Mazara. They have a lot of senior guards on this team. I'm pretty sure the only freshman that gets real minutes on this Auburn team is Todd Pettiford. The rest are seniors, I'm pretty sure. It's a very well-rounded group, and I do usually have Auburn at least in my Final Four, if not winning the entire thing. But I do think that there are some certain matchups that could knock Auburn out early, and I think Iowa State is one of those matchups. Give me Iowa State here to make it to the Final Four. I don't know when the last time Iowa State made the Final Four was, but that would be crazy to see them back in it. I think they have the team to do it. Them or Auburn definitely have the team to make the Final Four out of that region. Let's go down here to this region, which I believe would be the East region, where Duke is our number 1 seed. I will have Duke over Bryant in that first round pretty easily. And then we got Oklahoma versus New Mexico. Some really good players here. Donovan Dent has been one of the best point guards in the country, going up against Oklahoma, against freshman Jeremiah Fears, who has been killing it. Oklahoma's been slowing down a lot since they got into SEC play, and I'm going to take New Mexico. I think this team is really good. I think that they can get a win in March Madness. Give me the Lobos, Donovan Dent, one of the most underrated players, just because a lot of people don't know about New Mexico haven't watched a lot of New Mexico basketball, especially if you're just now getting into watching college basketball. As we get closer to March, Donovan Dent is a must-know name as we get closer to March. Next up, we got Kansas versus Yale, 5 versus 12, and this is going to be my biggest upset of the video so far. Maybe have a bigger one coming later down the line, but I am going to go with the Yale Bulldogs to defeat the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas has been pretty inconsistent this year, and yes, they do have some big wins, including one over Duke, which is the 1 seed in their region, but they've been very inconsistent. Their only real consistent player, in my opinion, has been Zeke Mayo. Everybody else, Hunter Dickinson, a little bit consistent, but he's really not been as good as he's been in recent years. KJ Adams doesn't seem to be as good as he's been in recent years. Same with DeJuan Harris Jr., their point guards. So Zeke Mayo, to me, is the best player on this team, and I don't know if it's going to be enough. I think he's going to play his heart out for this Kansas team. That's where he's from, is Lawrence, Kansas, but I like Yale here in this one. They're a dangerous 12 seed. They're undefeated in the Ivy League up to this point. There are some pretty good teams in that Ivy League, including Princeton. which Yale babied already this year. I like the Bulldogs in this one. They got a win last year in March Madness as well. They're returning John Polkonitis, who had a huge game, almost 30 last year against Auburn, who was a 4 seed and Yale was a 13, was able to pick up that win. I like the matchup here for Yale in the first round. And then we got Ole Miss versus High Point. I am going to go with Ole Miss in this one. I do like this High Point team, and if you've watched my Cinderellas video last week, I actually had High Point as one of my possible Cinderellas just because they are actually ranked top 10 in some offensive efficiency ratings in the net, which is very impressive. And I do think that they could put up a lot of points on Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is more of a defensive team. You know how Chris Beard likes to coach. He coaches defensive. But I do think Ole Miss is going to be able to get it done. It is going to be a close game. Like I said, High Point can put up some points. And usually when a defensive team plays an offensive team, it's going to, usually be a close game because Ole Miss is going to get enough stops, force enough turnovers to, maybe get out in front. But High Point's going to score enough points, hit enough threes to keep it close, which is why I could give High Point a chance, and I almost gave them the nudge in this matchup. But I decided to go with the Ole Miss Rebels here. I trust Chris Beard as a coach, even though he might be a terrible person, with the allegations, all that stuff. But he's a phenomenal coach. So I'm going to give Ole Miss the edge there. Mississippi State versus the Drake Bulldogs. And I want to go with Drake. They are a great story. I had them go pretty deep in last week's March Madness predictions video. And I kind of want to pick them again, but I like this Mississippi State team, guys. I think Josh Hubbard is a great player, and I think he's going to go really hard in March Madness. Of course he is, and I think he's going to have close to 30 points in this game. Give me Mississippi State in this one. I think Bennett Sturts on Drake could have a big game as well, but they're more of, they're not a high-scoring team. Mississippi State can be. Given the right matchup. And I think that Mississippi State can put up some points on Drake. Give me Mississippi State in this one. Michigan State versus Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's really emerged as maybe the front runner in the Conference USA. There are a lot of really good teams in that league. I do think the winner of Conference USA has a chance to pull off an upset. However, not against Coach Izzo. Give me Michigan State in this matchup. Next up, we do have Oregon versus Gonzaga. Battle of two West Coast teams that have been, up and down this year for sure. Both of them probably pretty down at this point. I like Gonzaga in this matchup, though. I think that they have the front court that can really, work most teams in the country, to be honest. And Oregon is definitely one of those teams. Yes, they do have Nate Brittle down low, but I like Gonzaga in this matchup a ton. Oregon could definitely win. Dana Altman is a great head coach, but Gonzaga's made the Sweet 16, I think, the last, 6-7 years, I want to say. Very consistently, Mark Few is living in the Sweet 16. But he's going to have a tough matchup because I am going to have Houston over Norfolk State. Even though Norfolk, interesting, fun team. They hit a big buzzer beater, I think, from half court, a couple of weeks ago. That was pretty insane. But Houston's defense, one of the best in the country, and I don't think Norfolk State has much of a chance. Duke versus New Mexico, that would be really fun to see. Donovan Dent versus Cooper Flagg in that matchup, super fun. But I do think Duke is too good. They're gonna try to shut down Donovan Dent. They're not gonna let him beat them. But that would be an awesome round 2 matchup to see because I do think New Mexico would keep it close. But give me Duke. I think their defense is too good, and they pull away in the end and get to the Sweet 16. Then we do have Yale versus Ole Miss. And I'm kind of thinking about a Yale run here. I do think it is possible with the matchups that they have received in the first couple of rounds. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a nice little run here by our 12 seed in this East region. Give me Yale over Ole Miss in this one. They do have some good players like Sean Padula, who is, kind of an experienced point guard. He's been there at Virginia Tech, who's made the tournament one year, won the ACC tournament one year. Malik Dia is a big man that has really caught my eye recently. He plays phenomenal, and he's actually been hitting a few threes lately. He's kind of like a power forward, but they can put him in as the 5 in a small ball lineup. I do like this Ole Miss team. Very defensive, like I said, coached by Beer. They're going to be defensive. Give me Yale in that matchup. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Michigan State. And I think that this would be a fist fight. We saw this matchup last year in March Madness. I'm just now realizing it. Mississippi State, Michigan State was a matchup last year where Michigan State did win. Will we see a repeat of that, or will we see some revenge? I'm going to say we get some Chris Jans, Josh Hubbard revenge from last year. Give me Mississippi State in the Sweet 16. That would be great to see. I think Chris Jans is an excellent head coach. Josh Hubbard, I love to watch this guy play. And yes, Mississippi State has kind of fallen off recently, but it's a tough league there in the SEC. I think they'll still be ready for March. Then we got Gonzaga versus Houston in the second round. Can Mark Few keep his streak alive here, of making it to Sweet 16s? I'm going to say no. I think Houston's too good. And a lot of you guys were... I don't know if you guys are very high on Houston, but I've been very impressed with this team. Emmanuel Sharp just came back, who is probably their best three-point shooter. It's either him or OJ Cryer. And that is a huge addition for them to get back. Houston has one of the best, most underrated front courts, and they're underrated because they don't really show up in the stat sheet, other than, Juwan Roberts, who is recently been putting up 20 points. It seems like at least 15 to 20 every game. But between him, Tugler, Francis, very underrated front court, and they all play defense. You're not going to play for Kelvin Sampson if you don't play defense. I like Houston there, guys. Then we got Duke versus Yale. This is sadly where Yale's run is going to come to an end. Duke just too good defensively. They're going to try to slow down John Polkonitis, and they're going to try to get the dub here. So give me Duke here to move on. Then we got Mississippi State versus Houston. And I am actually going to have a slight upset here. I decided to go with Mississippi State to pull off the 6 over the 2 and make it into the Elite 8. I just think that this team with Josh Hubbard, they have some experienced players. Chris Jans, super underrated head coach. I think that this would have to be, I'm not going to lie, Houston is the better team. On paper, especially defensively, it's kind of a tough sell. And I understand that, but this is going to be one of those games where Houston has it in the bag and Mississippi State just comes out of nowhere, gets a turnover, hits a buzzer beater, something happens to where Houston blows the game and Mississippi State moves on. I'm predicting kind of a crazy situation here because matchup-wise, technically Houston should win, and on paper Houston is the better team, but I'm going to go with Mississippi State to just ride this wave of winning through these games. Coming off of a win over Hall of Fame coach Tom Izzo and this Michigan State team who's one of the best in the Big Ten. And now they're going to try to go kill the giants out of the Big 12, which is the Houston Cougars. And they do it off of some hype. Josh Hubbard having some big games. Playing defense, tough, gritty defense, matching Houston's tough, gritty defense, and making a big play at the end of the game. Give me Mississippi State here to make it to the Elite 8. Unfortunately, I am going to have Duke in my Final Four, though. I think Duke does end up beating this Mississippi State team. They had a physical fight all the way to the Elite 8 versus physical teams like Michigan State, Houston, and they have another physical defensive team in Duke. Maybe the best defensive team in the country, and they get it done. A lot of people see this Duke team. Why are they a 1 seed? Well, Cooper Flagg's been going crazy. Yes, he's been playing pretty good, for the most part. Last few games, not so much. But it's really their defense. And guys like Tyrese Proctor still having good games. Colin Kneppel having some good games. I like this Duke team, guys. I got them in the Final Four. And honestly, I think that this is a region where, other than Houston, this is a region where I'd have a hard time seeing a lot of teams come out of other than Houston or Duke. I'm just being honest. And that's kind of hard to pick against there. Those are two of the top defenses in the country. With this region up here that we already filled up where I had Iowa State is a stacked region. You got Auburn, Iowa State, Memphis, Louisville, Kentucky. Georgia as an 11 seed, Purdue. That is a stacked region. That's going to be a fist fight all the way through. But yeah, we got our first 2 members of the Final Four for this bracket predictions. Iowa State 3 seed, Duke 1 seed. Now let's go over to this top right region because I have some interesting things happening in this region, and I want you guys to be open-minded. And just because I pick against your team does not mean I hate your team. Maybe it does. Maybe I hate them. But Tennessee is our 1 seed, and I have, something that I don't do often because we have Merrimack versus Omaha in our 16 matchup. I actually really like those 2 teams as 16 teams between Merrimack and Omaha. I'm going to go with Omaha to win against Merrimack, and I'm going to have Omaha as our 3rd team ever to pull off a 16 over a 1. And I would probably never pick one of these in my official bracket predictions videos in an actual bracket. But for me, Omaha is one of the best kept secrets storylines in college basketball. They're on a pretty good win streak right now in the Summit League, which I actually think the Summit League is actually pretty decent, and there's no way a Summit League winner should be a 16 seed. I think that they should be at least a 15 seed. That's just me, though. They got some good teams like St. Thomas, South Dakota State, Omaha. Whoever comes out of that league is definitely going to deserve at least a 15 seed in my eyes. And I'm going to have them over Tennessee, which in my opinion, Tennessee is a good team, but they're probably the weakest 1 seed. And Omaha, to me, is the clear top 16 seed. So for this special occasion, have a little fun. We're going to go with Omaha to beat Tennessee and continue their tradition of going to the locker room and smashing a trash can with a baseball bat. Excellent storyline for March Madness. They deserve better than a 16 seed. I'd like to see them pull off the 3rd ever 16 over 1. Then we got Maryland versus St. Mary's in our 8-9 matchup. I really like both of these teams. Both these teams are being slept on. I think Maryland definitely deserves higher than an 8 seed too. I am going to go with Maryland, show them some love because the Terps are really good this year. It is not just the 2 big men down low, who is quietly one of the best front courts in college basketball between Derek Queen and Julian Reese, but also Jacoby Gillespie as the point guard as well. They're doing really well over there in Maryland. Got to take them here in the first round. Next up, we got Marquette versus either Arkansas or San Diego State because he does have teams like UC San Diego and Drake as at-large bids. It pushes one of the first 4 games to be a 12 seed line. And I am going to take... I know Arkansas has been playing a lot better recently, which is weird because Boogie Flan did get hurt. Is there correlation between those 2 things? Because as soon as he got hurt, they started playing a lot better. But I am going to go with San Diego State in that one. They have beaten John L. Davis before in a Final Four game when he was with FAU. Give me San Diego State to do it again. But I am going to have Marquette beat the winner of that game. I do like Marquette in both those matchups, and I like Marquette against San Diego State. Cam Jones, super good player, helps to get it done here in the first round. Then we do have Michigan versus Arkansas State. And the Sun Belt's a little bit weird. I do think Arkansas State is probably the best team in that league, but I am going to take Michigan. Michigan had a big win against Purdue today, came back and won that game. And Michigan's one of those teams I'm on and off on. Sometimes I feel really good about Michigan making a run at least to the Sweet 16. Other days I'm like, that's a team that could definitely lose in the first round. So I like Danny Wolf. Sometimes, he I don't think he looks that great. I think I was maybe overhyping him earlier in the year. Some games he looks awesome, like wow, he's that good of a playmaker as a big. But other days I'm like, what the heck are you doing? So I'm very iffy on Michigan, but I am going to have them over Arkansas State. And then we do have Creighton versus UC San Diego. UC San Diego got a big win against UC Irvine, which has been a cool little rivalry in the Big West Conference, and looking really good while doing it as well. Creighton, though, has been an amazing offensive team. killing it lately, one of the hottest teams in the country. It's really hard to pick against them at this point. They're actually playing UConn right now as I'm recording this video. I have no idea who won that game. But I'm gonna go with UC San Diego. I gotta pick either them or Drake as an 11 seed, and UC San Diego deserves it. I gotta pick them at least in this first round. Give me them to get it done. And then we got Arizona versus Utah Valley, which Utah Valley actually coming out of the WAC over Grand Canyon, which they're actually the top of the standings in that league, so it does make a lot of sense for Utah Valley to come out of that league at this point. Arizona's very hot right now. They just got another win over Texas Tech, a revenge game at home. They're playing at Kansas State right now. They were losing at halftime. I'm unsure if they did lose at Kansas State, but everybody's been losing at Kansas State. So that's been a tough place to play. They're actually on the rise right now. So either way, I like Arizona in this matchup here. Next up, we do have Illinois versus Wake Forest in our 7 versus 10. This would be an awesome 7-10 matchup. I think Illinois a little bit underrated as a 7 seed here. I got to give them the edge here in this one. It would be an awesome matchup to see Hunter Salas versus Kasparas Jakaitis. And yes, I know I call him Jakaitis, but that's kind of become his nickname here on the channel. If you are new, he's Jakaitis because he turns the ball over quite a bit. And, you know, I'll call him Jukionis or however you pronounce his name if he has a good game. If he has a bad game, he's Jakaitis. So Illinois moving on with a game by Jakaitis, not Jukionis. Next up, we got Texas A&M versus Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut, interesting mid-major. I could see them potentially pulling off an upset. You know, Texas A&M as a 2 seed. They definitely deserve a 2 seed. I had them as a 2 seed in my bracketology on Sunday, but it is interesting when you get one of those teams who's a 2 seed, who's not normally, you know, being a top seed in March Madness. You kind of think about it a little bit. Could they get upset? I could see it, but I do like Texas A&M a lot this year, and you guys know that. I've been high on them for most of the season, really, as a team who could potentially even make the Final Four. So I'm going to go with Texas A&M here in this one. Omaha, 16-1. Can they be the first 16 seed of those teams to make it to the Sweet 16, though? Possible, but I don't know. I like this Maryland team. Yes, Omaha, if they can beat Tennessee, they could definitely beat Maryland, but I'm going to go with Maryland here in this matchup. They pull off a magical miracle of an upset. I'm not going to have them go any further. Next up, we got Marquette versus Michigan in a 4 versus 5. This would be probably maybe the best second round matchup. I think this would be a phenomenal second round matchup, but I'm going to go with Marquette in this one. Like I said earlier, Danny Wolf is just a little bit too inconsistent for me sometimes. I think Cam Jones, if anything, he is consistent. Even if he's not scoring, he's playmaking, and they have guys who can get their own bucket other than Cam Jones, like a David Joplin, like a Chase Ross, who has really emerged this year, and Stevie Mitchell, who is just a great player as well. So, and then Ben Gold down low. I think this Marquette team, super good. Give me Marquette here in the Sweet 16. Then we got UC San Diego versus Arizona. I can't have UC San Diego go any further. I am going to have Arizona win. I just really like the trio of Caleb Love, KJ Lewis, and also Jaden Bradley. I think that they're great players, and they also have a front court that plays tough, guys. They play defense. They rebound excellently. Give me Arizona here in this one. Illinois versus Texas A&M. Wade Taylor versus Jukionis. I do think Illinois does have a good game in this one. I could see them pulling off this upset. I kind of want to pick it. I really do want to pick this upset. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about some of these matchups. It would be between Tim Oslov down low versus Henry Coleman. Battle of the bigs down there. I think that's a pretty even matchup. I think Wade Taylor and Zerk Phelps, they have a big game. I like Texas A&M, I think, guys. I like Texas A&M. Senior Wade Taylor needs to make a run, and I think he does here. Maryland versus Marquette in the Sweet 16. This is a matchup that we've actually seen where Maryland was the home team and Marquette was able to go in there and get the victory. However, Maryland looking for some revenge in this rematch. Like I said, I know Marquette will beat them in College Park, but I'm going with Marquette still. I'm going with Maryland still. Sorry. Going with Maryland still. I think that their front court has gotten a lot better since then, specifically their star freshman Derek Queen. I think he can dominate down low, dominate Ben Gold down low. It's going to be a huge problem for this team. And Marquette has a lid on the basket a little bit. They don't have a horrible shooting night, but they don't have the best shooting night. And Maryland's able to capitalize on that. And they get it done in this one. Huge game by Derek Queen. Then we got Arizona versus Texas A&M. This would be another great matchup. I know I keep saying that, but I just cannot wait for March Madness because majority of these teams in the field right now are going to be in the tournament, and there are going to be a ton of very close games. I think this would be another one of them. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I've been very high on them this year. Got to have them in the Elite Eight right now. They've been playing good recently as well. Give me the Aggies, and this will be their first ever Elite Eight. If you saw my teams that could make their first ever Final Four this year, Texas A&M was one of those teams. They've never even made the Elite Eight. I think senior year of Wade Taylor, head coach Buzz Williams, who's a great head coach, gets them to their first ever Elite Eight. But will they get them to their first ever Final Four? I'm going to go with no. I'm going to go with Maryland to make it to the Final Four as an 8 seed. They get some help from Omaha, who upsets Tennessee as a 16 seed in the first round, and Maryland as an 8 seed to the Final Four. They get some help, like I said, and I also do think they are very underseeded as an 8 seed. They should be at least a 7, probably a 6. Give me the Terps here to make it to the Final Four with this path. Next up, we have our final region, where Alabama is our 1 seed going against Southern. And I am going to have Alabama win this game. Let me know who you guys are going to think. If you made it to this point in the video, let me know who's going to win this weekend on Saturday between Alabama and Auburn. Number 1 versus 2 in the Iron Bowl of basketball. Let me know down below in the comment section. Next up, we do have UConn versus Utah State in our 8-9 matchup. Would be a great matchup. I do think UConn is still the better team, though. I got to go with UConn in that matchup. There's so much talent. Solo ball is really the main reason I'm going to take UConn. They seem to struggle a little bit with, kind of having a go-to player on offense, and solo ball has really emerged, especially during Liam McNeely's injury. Now with Liam McNeely back, he's had a great start to the Creighton game. I watched a little bit of it before I started recording, and I like UConn in that first round, and UConn might be, picking up some speed here recently to possibly even go further. Next up, we got Texas Tech versus McNeese in our 5 versus 10. I don't like McNeese. I don't think they deserve a 12 seed either. I think they're more of a 13 or a 14. I'd actually give Akron the 12 seed over McNeese at this point. Akron's been killing it in the MAC conference, but give me Texas Tech. They've been playing great. JT Toppin, Chance McMillan, Elijah Hawkins, some awesome players on this team. Give me Texas Tech. And then we got St. John's versus Akron. Like I said, Akron's a great mid-major. They're best team in the MAC for sure. The MAC is always dangerous, but I am going to go with St. John's. I'm sorry I have to pick against one of my favorite players in college basketball, Seth Wilson and James Okonkwo. They're over there at the Akron Zips, but I got to go with St. John's. They're just one of my favorite teams as far as a sleeper team that could make it all the way to the Final Four. Up to a 4 seed now. I picked them a few weeks ago as an 8 seed to go to the Final Four, and they've really had some big games since then. I think a matchup between Texas Tech and St. John's in the second round would absolutely feed families. Got to take it here. Next up, we do have Missouri versus Ohio State, 6 versus 11 seed. That would be another pretty good one. I'm going to go with Missouri. I know they've been struggling a little bit. I think they lost their last 2. But those were two some really good teams They're in the SEC conference, and I still really like this Missouri team, especially offensively. I think Mark Mitchell, he's kind of back, getting 100%, and he's going to be huge for them. You know, I feel like they were missing him, but they were still winning big games. They have not only Caleb Grill, but they have another dude who has been lighting it up from three-point range, Jacob Cruz, pretty electric as well. And then, of course, Tamar Bates. Some electric players that I think could help them, you know, especially in March Madness. The type of players you think would win in March. Next up, we got Wisconsin versus Lipscomb. I've never really liked Lipscomb this year as a team to pull off an upset, and I've been higher and higher on Wisconsin. So give me Wisconsin to move on there. Next up, we got Clemson versus Nebraska. This is a tough one for Nebraska ball because Clemson has been one of the hottest teams in the country. Coming off of back-to-back wins against Duke and North Carolina, got to take Clemson here in that matchup. Look out for the chef, Ian Shefflin, double-double against Nebraska ball. Next up, we got Florida versus Townsend, and I am going to take the Florida Gators. If Clemson isn't the hottest team in the country, the Florida Gators are. Coming off of a win on the road at Auburn, and also picking up a dub against Mississippi State here right before I record this video. Huge W as well. Florida is red hot right now. And by this time next week, when we fill out these again, Florida might be a 1 seed. They need one more W on Saturday. They're most likely a 1 seed. Next up, we got Alabama versus UConn. I do think UConn has a chance in this one. But no, I can't take them. Alabama, just one of the best offensive teams in the country. They play at a crazy pace. And although Liam McNeely is back, Solo Ball is playing good. I don't think UConn has enough offensive firepower to compete with this Alabama team this year when they're going in March. Give me the Tide to roll to the Sweet 16. Next up, we got Texas Tech versus St. John's. As I mentioned earlier, this would feed families. Texas Tech, very good offensively. Got some good defense as well, but St. John's really prides itself on its defense. Rick Pitino has one of the best defensive teams in the country, and those Johnnies are physical. Very physical there in the Big East, and I'm very 50-50 on this one. Very, very 50-50 on this one. But I'm going to go with St. John's. I think both these teams have potential to not only win that game, of course, and maybe even knock off Alabama, but to make it to the Final Four. I truly believe this is a very tough region. Clemson has a 7, Wisconsin, Missouri, Florida, all these teams I had win in the first round. Right here, Alabama, UConn, Texas Tech, St. John's, Missouri, Wisconsin, Clemson, Florida. Not even exaggerating, I could see all of those teams in the Final Four out of this region, which is insane. Absolutely insane. That's why I didn't pick any upsets in this region. I think that all those teams are playing really well right now, and that would be a tough region to predict. After this first round, that would be a tough region to predict. I'll go with St. John's over Texas Tech, though. Missouri versus Wisconsin, another very tough one to pick. Tony Perkins also showing up big for Missouri as a point guard, veteran point guard. Used to play for Iowa. Knows a thing or two about playing Wisconsin. They got some new guys there, man. John Tungy, who has been awesome. Great at getting to the foul line, great at driving to the bucket. Blackwell as a guard has been really great for Wisconsin. I still like Missouri. I still like Mizzou. Tamar Bates is an electric player. He's going to make big plays. You got Caleb Grill and Jacob Cruz, who are two white guys who are going to shoot the ball lights out when we get to March Madness. Mark Mitchell's back as your big. I like this Missouri team. Give me them to make it to the Sweet 16. Clemson versus Florida. another fantastic one, guys. I can't pick against Florida right now. The way that they are playing, they're very hard to beat. They just beat Mississippi State down pretty bad with, again, not only did they beat Auburn on the road and then beat Mississippi State, but they did it without Elijah Martin. And beginning of the Mississippi State game, they lost Alex Condon, their big man. He was out for the rest of the game. He should be back, especially by time March Madness, which will be huge for them because this Florida team, not only are they one of the most high-powered offenses in the entire country, but they also are very good at offensive rebounding, getting out in transition, and shooting the three ball. They are a great rebounding team, though. That is the most underappreciated thing about this Florida team. Every time I watch them, I was like, man, another offensive rebound? Are you kidding me? And then that's the best shot you can get. If you get a paint touch, kick it back out, and you're getting a straightaway catch for a three, high percentage looks, especially when you got guys like Walter Clayton, when you get Elijah Martin back, when you got Will Richard, they're going to be very tough to beat. I got to take Florida here, and I'm also just going to go ahead and say, while I'm talking about them, give me Florida against Missouri in that SEC matchup. I think Florida, very hot right now, tough to beat. I got Florida all the way to the Elite Eight there. And then we got Alabama versus St. John's, and very, very much so offense versus defense. Alabama's maybe the top offensive efficiency, offensive, speed, as far as their pace in the country. St. John's, they can still play at a high pace, but very defensive. They're going to force turnovers. That's kind of how they play their pace. They get out into transition. St. John's going to force turnovers. The thing that I worry about St. John's in this one could be their three-point shooting, and maybe even their free throw shooting. And that is the reason I am going to take Alabama in this matchup. St. John's, I'm purely not picking them because they suck at shooting free throws. And that lost them the Baylor game earlier in the year. It really did. And I don't know if they have a reliable free throw shooter. I guess their best one would maybe be R.J. Lewis or Davion Smith. Probably Davion Smith, honestly. Kadarius Richmond can't shoot free throws. Zuby Ejiofor, no. Yeah, I don't trust them. I think it'll be a close game. I think they lose because they miss free throws. Alabama, just too good, and you're going to have to make free throws if you're going to beat them. Alabama versus Florida, another SEC battle here in this one. It would be fantastic, super high scoring, very entertaining. I think Walter Clayton, the better player than Mark Sears. Wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the season, but now at this point, Walter Clayton is one of the best players in the country and one of the best scoring point guards in the country. I think he's the best player on the court in this one. And I would say Alabama has the front court advantage because of Cliff Amorie and Grant Nelson. But on paper, yes. But Alex Condon down low and this team down low, they play great defense. They have shot blocking. And like I mentioned, they are a really good rebounding team. Give me the Florida Gators. Combine that with, I think Florida has the better backcourt. I'm taking Florida here to the Final Four. Then we got our Final Four set. We have 3-seed Iowa State versus 1-seed Duke. And we got 8-seeded Maryland as kind of our Cinderella sleeper pick versus 2-seeded Florida. So 3, 1, 2, and 8. And I really like this Final Four. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. So our first Final Four matchup, Iowa State versus Duke. 1-seed versus 3-seed. And these two teams both have feisty defenses. I know I talked about Duke's defense a lot, but Iowa State's one of those teams that are really pretty sure they're top 25 offense and defense. They can do it on both sides. I definitely would give the advantage to Iowa State's guards. As much as I do like Tyrese Proctor and Sion James, Sion James has been a very underappreciated player for this Duke team this year, playing awesome. I do give the advantage to Iowa State there, and I think this is going to be a close game. Duke's going to hang in there with their defense. Cooper Flagg's going to hit some big buckets. Colin Kneppel's going to hit some big buckets down the stretch of this March Madness run, in my opinion, as well. And They got Common down low, who's going to be guarding the paint well, who I really like for Duke. Another very underappreciated for them to have that anchor down low who can rebound. But I'm going to go with Iowa State. I think that they're the better team. We've seen time after time, once again this past week at Clemson, where Cooper Flagg, when he needs to hit the big shot to give his team the lead with under 2 minutes, under a minute, he just can't deliver. I feel like that is how Duke's season is going to end at this point, and I'm going to give Iowa State the edge, not only because of that, but because I do believe they have the better team. Then we do have Maryland versus Florida, and unfortunately, this is where Maryland's run is going to have to come to an end. I don't see them beating Florida. I think Florida is the hottest team in the country right now. They're going to make the championship game over Maryland. It was a hell of a run for Maryland. The Terps all the way to the Final Four. You cannot be disappointed in that season. In fact, you should celebrate that season. So, Terps to the Final Four. I definitely think Rodney Rice could hit some big. He's definitely going to hit some big shots on that March Madness run. Derek Queen's going to have some huge game. Julian Reese as well. Jacoby Gillespie's going to have to hit some big shots. But Florida, maybe in a blowout, honestly, beats Maryland in that one. And then we have a national championship game, which I think a lot of fans would be happy with, because these are teams that, yes, Florida was a really good basketball school, in the late 2000s there, but where they won back-to-back national championships, but they haven't been, doing too great in basketball recently, and they're finally back to that program who is one of the best in the country, and Iowa State has the team to get there this year, but they've never been here before. It would be an awesome championship game, and between, in my opinion, maybe the two of the best backcourts in the country, Taman Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, versus Florida's Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, who will be back, Will Richard, and also a guy who's really stepped up in Elijah Martin's absence is Aberdeen. I think Aberdeen is going to be a big factor in this March Madness run for the Florida team, along with Alex Condon down low, and because of that, I don't really trust Iowa State's front court that much between just Deshaun Jackson. I do think Milan Mamovic, he's going to have, a great tournament as well, but I will give the edge to Florida because of their defense in the front court and because of their rebounding. I think that they're the better team. I think that they're going to be able to defend the paint better. They're really comfortable in playing in those fast-paced games because they've been playing teams like Alabama and Kentucky and Auburn and all these fast-paced offenses. They're going to be ready for it. Iowa State does have that good feisty defense, but at this point, I am going to take Florida to win the national championship. For the first time, I'm taking Florida to win it all. I've had them in my Final Four before, but I am going to take them to win it all this week. The Gators back on top for the first time since, 2008? It was 2007, 2008 when they won those championships. So back on top of the mountain, but solid seasons. John Shire getting to his first Final Four as a coach with Duke. Iowa State getting to their first championship game ever. Could be wrong there, but none that I remember. Maryland, is this their first Final Four since they won it all in 2002? Maybe. So yeah, that would be an awesome run for a lot of these teams to celebrate this season, especially Florida winning it all here. So let me know what you guys think about my bracket down below in the comment section, guys. Really interested to see what you guys think of it this week. And as I said before, we do these once a week at least. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys haven't already. We're on the road to 10K. So definitely do that. Helps out the channel a ton, guys. More than you would ever know. So I appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys who have already subscribed. And be on the lookout for more content. Thank you guys so much for watching.